Welcome back to the Liberty Perspective. I'm Joe Marshall. Today, the show that I've got prepped for you is regarding property rights. We have property rights. They're fundamental, the fundamental cornerstone, actually, if you want to get down to it, is the cornerstone of our liberty is property rights. Without a fundamental, recognized, and secured right to private property, a free society can't exist. And revolutionary collectivism at large knows that. You can't have, without private property, you can't have a fundamental exchange of property owned for property desired, which is free enterprise. In a free market, which is a free people voting freely with their dollars or whatever other property they're exchanging for property desired, property owned for property desired, which is the fundamental of any business transaction, whether it's a service or a product, it's, or an idea, that is property that you own. You write a book, you get a patent, it's your book. You come up with an idea, that's your idea. Build a better mousetrap, the world will beat a path to your door. Right, P? Mini P's up here with me today. There you go, kid. It's getting real hot today, so I'm going to try and get this through before it gets too hot. You might hear a buzz in the background. Can't help it. I got a fan on me here. Gets like an oven up in here. It gets too hot, but so that, and I got a new a different camera. So we're working on a couple different things here today, a couple different things happening. So I'm sorry about the buzzes in the background if you're hearing that. I might even have to turn that fan up a little bit before we get done here. But anyways, I'm touching on intellectual property. It's collectivism and the human rights perspective that divides our property rights into a plethora of different individual types of property. They refer to it as social or cultural. There's different types of rights that may or may not be recognized by the world collectivism or world socialism of human rights within that social contract theory kind of shit. And this is what I've been trying to get at, is that you think you have a right not to take the jab? You think you have a right not to wear a mask? Well, from our founding principles perspective, that's correct. You do have an individual, an unalienable. No lien can be put on them. They're outside the jurisdiction of human civilization, of human civil society, of the collective. They're outside the jurisdiction. They're natural, God-given rights, be it of nature or nature's God, one way or the other. But in the world socialism or world collectivism of human rights, the responsibility that you owe to the collective comes first. Okay? You think you have a right not to take the jab? In the world socialism of collective of human rights, in the collectivism of human rights, there is a duty to the collective. There is an obligation on the government on behalf of the human rights perspective that they're pushing everything in to protect the society or community or the collective, the state, whatever it is, over and above whatever individual rights that you have. And it ties in with public health. It ties in with gun rights. You think you have an individual right to bear arms? Keep and bear arms? Not within the realm of human rights, you don't. Even if you say that you have a right, the public has a right to they have the Declaration of Human Rights. It says right to life, liberty, security of person. It's not the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of our founding. That's the life, liberty, and security of person of collectivism. And that security of person applies to the collective, or they have the right to the security of person that you say your gun rights are violating. Because gun rights as now have been being pushed recently as a public health issue. The violence of gun rights, of guns in general, Okay? It all ties in the same thing. The public has the right, not you. And if you do have a right, it's within the constructs, within the confines. They cannot be understood outside the duties that you owe to the collective. You know, they cannot. And this is what I've been trying to get across. I'm going to show you some things today, and some different things and how they go down through. I don't know how much of this I'm going to get into today's show, but this is going to be an introduction. There's probably going to be a series of a few shows on how our private property rights tie into public health, and how the Human Genome Project ties into that, and how that they've been going after our intellectual property rights, intangibles, like, patents and copyrights, whatever your ideas are. They're going after them as a threat, as a conflict, that they conflict with human rights. If you have they'll tell you that your copyright or your patent or whatever intellectual property right, or whatever property right, doesn't matter, gives you a monopoly on that particular item or that particular product or that particular idea or that particular service, whatever it is that you hold the patent on. Okay? There's a conflict with that. And what the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights says are the rights to health for everyone. The right to science for everyone. You know what I mean? So there's a conflict between the individualism of our individual rights and liberty, property rights, and the collectivism that says you shouldn't own jack shit unless it benefits the frickin' collective. But anyways, I got this, can you see that? It's got human rights, public health, global governance all ties into this too, because human rights is the world socialism of human rights, the world collectivism of human rights. Communism is a global collectivism. Humanism is a global collectivism, versus the collectivism of nationalism, which in the end is a global collectivism, just a collective of nations on a global scale. In the end, But anyways, I wanted to go over. Give me 2 seconds. Be right back. Yeah. I figured of 2 seconds. But anyways, I got some stuff wrote down here. Just to go down and show you that I'm not making this shit up. I'm seeing it. What I see in things is I've been looking into this collectivist doctrine. I've been researching collectivist doctrine since I first came across it in prison. Probably 15, 20 years ago. Probably going on a couple decades anyways, And that's the research that I did in order to, and I put it together after at least 10 years of research to put that book together. And it took me another few years to put the book together, but just so that you can have the information, so the public. So I wrote it for my kids, really, but so that they would have a trusted source on how to decipher the collectivism and the individualism and what their individual rights and liberty is and what our founding principles are, and decipher those from the collectivism that's targeted at for destruction, which in many cases disguises itself as our founding principles and wraps itself in pictures of our founders and patriotic nationalism. I mean, look at the nationalist populist right? I mean, they're all wrapped up in red, white, and blue and shit. But that nationalism is just as much an enemy of our founding principles and founding republic and limited constitution, limited government, as any other collectivism. But in this human rights and public global health, okay, there's this organization called South Center. It's a NGO or whatever it is, but the South Center offers diverse services to its member states and other developing countries of the groups of 77 in China. But the South Center, a group of 77 in China, aimed at improving access to medicine in the context of intellectual property policies. Rationale: improving equity and access to medicine is an essential part of the realization of government responsibilities. Like I said, human rights implies government responsibilities to provide, government's responsibilities to grant, government responsibility to redistribute whatever they have to redistribute in order to cure the inequities or disparate impact that the oppressor society, which happens to be ours, that's been targeted for destruction. Right? Sorry about that. So they're saying improving equity and access to medicines is an essential part of the realization of government responsibilities with regards to the right to health. Got a right to health, a right to science, got a right to repair. A lot of different things that are happening out there is a threat to our property rights at large. I didn't even hear about right to repair. Didn't even know, never even heard of it until Dr. Jonathan Cooey had mentioned it on his show. So I want to thank him for bringing that even into my peripherals, because it wasn't there. But there's a lot to learn from that, and we're going to be getting into that, sometime soon. But there's a lot of other shit that I've got in here already that I can't roll that in. I'll be here for 6 hours. But rationale: improving equity is a fundamental human right. Improving equity and access to medicine is an essential part of the realization of government responsibilities with regards to the right to health, a fundamental human right. The World Health Organization is in a number of resolutions, as well as the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, right? All redistributive justice, right? Encourages governments to use flexibilities in the agreement on trade relations aspects of intellectual property rights, TRIPS. That TRIPS thing, I think it goes back to like 2003, where it makes people recognize the intellectual property rights, patents, and stuff like that around the world. But collectivism sees that as imperialist, as colonialist, you know what I mean? To promote affordable access to medicine, the UN Secretary General's high-level panel on access to medicine also recommended the World Health Organization members, WTO members to make full use of TRIPS flexibilities. World Trade Organization, that's what it is. To make full use of TRIPS flexibilities to strengthen the capacity of patent examiners. To strengthen the capacity of patent examiners, which means, you say you have a patent? Well, we'll see about that. You got these panels, committees that are going to, we'll see about that. We'll look at it through a human rights lens or a world socialist lens, and we'll tell you what we see. Right? Yeah. At both the national and regional levels, to apply rigorous standards of patentability, taking into account public health needs. Public health needs. You got to take those into account. This is where I'm saying, you think you have an individual right not to take the jab? Well, we got to take into consideration. We got to take the public health needs into consideration of that. The public health threatened by you not taking the jab. You see what I'm saying? Public health threatened by you not wearing a mask. This is the context in that right to choice, that freedom to choose, freedom of choice, right to choose shit is all within the realm. You do have a right to choose. You do have freedom of choice, but choices between what? Freedom to choose between what? And within what confines? Do you see what I'm saying? There's a lot of human rights advocacy organizations out there, a lot of human rights, whatever, a lot of collectivism out there, human rights oriented, or well, they're all human rights oriented basically, but great majority of them. But whether or not they're directly involved with human rights is that there is that confines of the needs of the right of the collective to that security of person, which applies to the security of the collective, which is end objective is the security of the collective. And that's how they sell it to these people. And they tell these people at public at large that this guy not taking the vaccine or this person not taking the vaccine or not wearing a mask is a threat to you, A, B, and C. And then they used, and I showed in a couple shows, earlier shows that I did, on how they used a lot of applied psychology tactics, military grade psychology tactics, halo effect and nudge, and a lot of different motivational interviewing skills. And one of the psychological tactics that they used for maximum vaccine uptake was what they called social contract theory, which comes out of Rousseau and Hobbes and even Plato. You know, the same shit. This is the same shit. And now this is another thing here. Oh, let me see what the hell was this? Just out of curiosity, I wasn't going to listen to this. How long is this freaking thing? 5 minutes. Not even in English. But anyways, I got another video for you to watch. I don't know, this whole public health shit. From patents, I don't know how to pronounce that, Jindal Forum, it's out of India, right? From patents to patients. Exploring the nexus of individual property rights and human rights in global healthcare. I'm not making this shit up. It's right in the headline there. But anyways, this is the article. This is the article. And out of that article, I got a couple quotes in here, just a couple things to highlight. And I strongly suggest that any of these articles that I bring up, that I discuss here, that you go back and read them entire, because I'm only getting part of it. I'm only getting some of the stuff that just pops up that kind of floats to the top on me when I'm looking at it, you know. I mean, there's more to these articles than just what I'm showing you, and they don't take away from what I'm telling you. They drive it in even deeper. They exponentially expand on what I'm trying to tell you. They don't push back against it, they expand on it. So read them. I encourage it. That's why I'm doing this, because I'm not just making it up. Okay. Patenting life-saving drugs has made human life a commodity. That's intrinsic to about 99.9% of collectivist doctrine, and has created conflicts and disasters during times of global health urgency. That's that disaster capitalism shit that Malone and of Naomi Klein, that both Robert Malone and Dr. James Thorpe were pushing heavy in his family. While intellectual property rights serve as a driving force for innovating and research through the creation of life-saving drugs, So right there, they're admitting that it's the innovation inspired by a free society and a free exchange of ideas and a right to own property and our right to our property and our labor and the fruits of our labor be it mental or physical. Right? They're admitting that that's the source of it. That's what created the 5,000-year leap that I went over in my last show. The whole concept of the quality of life for the whole of humanity, the tide that lifts all boats, if you will. Freedom, liberty, right? While intellectual property rights, this is a collectivist version of this, serve as a driving force for innovation and research. Okay, yeah. Through the creation of life-saving drugs. This is what, okay, it also, this is the second half of that, gives rise to conflicts. So there's a conflict between public health and patents of intellectual property rights. This is what they're telling you, right? From India. Right. The application of intellectual property rights within healthcare system creates tension between the exclusive rights granted by patents, the exclusive rights, or AKA monopolies, in a lot of collectivist doctrine, Marxist doctrine. You'll see that our property rights, be they intellectual or any other type of property rights, are referred to as monopolies. Okay, just keep that in mind. Yeah. The application of IPR, intellectual property rights, within the healthcare system creates tension right from the get-go between the exclusive rights granted by patents and the universal right to health. Human rights guidelines framed concerning the right to health. Human rights guidelines framed concerning the right to health include attainable standards of health concerning high pricing, inappropriate drug promotion, clinical trials, etc., but have not been modified with respect to the growing importance of intellectual property rights in the legal field to encourage access to affordable medicines during times of pandemics or epidemics. The tension is there. Okay? Is what they're saying. How many times have you been shown where there's an actual tension between public health and our property rights? You know, it's out there. It's everywhere. But yet, how many of us are aware of it? How many are aware of the fundamental building blocks to this collectivist revolution that's been going on for 150, probably going on 200 years now? The main assault is against our property rights. And really, there's only one way to really understand that, and maybe I'll get into that, is Noah Webster's Noah Webster in the Federalist paper, one of the Federalists. He's not actually one of the Federalists in the Federalist Papers, but he was a Federalist, and in 1787, I think, he did a speech in defense of the Constitution. And I'll get into that so we can understand just a little bit more, maybe. I'll get into that so we can understand just a little bit more of why our property rights are so important to free society, our founding principles, and our founding republic. You know? Just trying to show you these things and so that you can see it and for your consideration, you know? You've got to take these things into consideration. You sit there and you listen to social media all day long. And Jonathan Cooley is right. You know, Mark Kulak is right on this. I write on a lot of things, but on this specifically at this point, the way social media works is that everybody, they want you to click buttons. They want you to click buttons. And of course, they keep putting different things in front of you, and you're going to click the things that like you or that you like or that piss you off, or things that whatever gets you to click the button or give a like or a shout out or a share or whatever, right? They're going to put this shit in front of you until you start clicking all these different things, and what that does is it sets up a personality. They know what your personality is, what your interests, dislike, all this other shit, right? Not only that, it silos the whole of society. It separates us into aggregates, you know, separate cells. Each one of us we're only getting you know, this whole an example, what I'm trying to think of here is the whole, right to health, the whole medical freedom movement in itself. If nobody in the world knows who these freaking people are, except for unless you're on social media and you're clicking them. So what that populist right perspective thing is. The MAGA people know what the MAGA perspective is. The Democrats on the left, or the socialists on the left, or the anarchists on the far left, they're all, or the anarchists on the far right, they only are seeing whatever is, backing up what they believe in, whatever is confirming their bias. You're not aware of what everybody else is listening to or seeing that is confirming their bias. So when you meet these people, you're thinking that they understand what you're saying, and you understand what they're saying, and you could be in conversation talking about two different things from two different perspectives, using the same words, and have absolutely no idea that the other person is actually saying the exact opposite as you. It's kind of nuts, really. It's kind of genius when you look at it from the perspective of the revolution. Chaos in the society targeted for destruction. So chaos at every opportunity. At every opportunity. The more chaos, the more revolutionary progress in progress, right? From the perspective of the revolution, is genius. You gotta see and give credit where credit's due, But I got the application of intellectual property rights within the healthcare system creates tension between the exclusive rights granted by the patents and the universal right to health. Human rights guidelines framed concerning the right to health include attainable standards of health concerning high prices, inappropriate drug promotion, clinical trials, etc., but have not been modified with respect to growing importance of intellectual property rights in the legal field. Yes, they have. Yes, they have. Try holding your government to strict scrutiny on violation of any rights. And again, Cooey has been on this. You can't, in the world collectivism, world socialism of human rights, there is no holding the government to strict scrutiny, because it gets lost. You can't hold strict scrutiny for individual. You can't hold the strict scrutiny for the violation of individual rights in the collective world of collective rights of human rights. You can't hold the government to strict scrutiny. You can only hold it to a rational basis test. And I went over that in that last video too, with the 5,000-year leap. Pretty sure it was that video. I went over that. And it shows you right in, I think it was a white paper I went over that it says it right in there. I'm not making this shit up. But, right. This, all to encourage access to affordable medicines during times of pandemics, privileging patents over healthcare. At the heart of the conflict between intellectual property rights and global healthcare lies the ethical quandary of blatant commodification of healthcare, which is, for profits, commodities, profits, right? And unrealistic profits being driven in this sector and can exacerbate global inequality, because that's capitalism, the inequity and the exploitive, inequities and disparate impact of capitalism. Collectivism 101, Marxism 101, right? Also from India, I got this other one. This other organization here, IPR, Intellectual Property Rights and Human Rights. Notice the date. This is 2025. This is 2025 here. This is 2024. This isn't ancient history. This is stuff that's been building up. And when they flipped the switch with, it all came into real prominence when they flipped the switch for, with COVID. Lockdowns for COVID. But anyways, and this is the article here. I'm sorry if I'm seeming a little bit all over the place. I'm trying to get this done. There's a lot to go over. just trying to sort this through in my own brain too, what order to bring it to you. It's just, it is what it is. So kick back and enjoy it, man. But it's the important thing is I'm showing you that there is a contention, bottom line, between human rights, the collectivism, progressivism, the progressive collectivism of and what of our individual property rights. There's a contention where our individual rights lose. Understanding what our individual rights are from the perspective of our founding principles versus understanding what our rights are in the human rights, collectivism, the world socialism of human rights. They're diabolically opposed. This is what I'm trying to show you. Again, I'm trying in many different ways to show you where this is actually happening, and this is in public health. What is public health, right? What is public health? But anyways, a couple highlights out of this introduction. There is always a clash between intellectual property rights and human rights. I didn't say it. They did. Not in my words, but there is always a clash between intellectual property rights and human rights. Is there anybody in America left that understands that as the threat to our liberty and republic and limited constitution that it is? Is there anybody left out there? Just wondering. Role of human rights in the role of human rights in the realization of intellectual property rights. Here's where we get into another line of bullshit that was being pushed by Dr. David Martin, one of the couple shows that I went over on him. Human rights played a crucial role in the realization of intellectual property rights, which is bullshit. It's flat out bullshit, because our intellectual property rights are a part of our natural individual rights, which are God's nature's. You know, they're endowed by our Creator, be it nature or nature's God, which pre-existed our society, which pre-existed human rights. Human rights are a product of civil human origin. Our government is a product of our liberty. Government instituted among men, deriving its just powers from the consent of the government, or from the consent of the governed. Or everything that you have and everything that you are is a product of society and of human and civil origin. Therefore, they hold the lien on it. You know, where our natural rights endowed by our Creator are unalienable. It's another difference in our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence. Our rights are unalienable. Our natural individual rights are unalienable, where in the Declaration of Human Rights, they're inalienable. And what I'm saying is that, yeah, they are inalienable. And there's a difference between unalienable, where no lien can be put on them. They're outside the jurisdiction. You owe no man. We owe no man for our individual rights and liberty. Human rights, different story. Human rights of human civil origin, different story. They cannot be understood outside the context of the duties owed in return for them. That comes right from Auguste Comte. You know, it's all part of the same collectivism. Human rights played a crucial role in the realization of intellectual property rights, and Dr. David Martin pushing all that shit with Magna Carta and everything, saying that our Constitution, the only right that the Constitution gave us was a right to intangible property rights, which is bullshit, because we don't get any of our rights from government. We don't get any of our rights. None of it came from any human or civil origin. This is a collectivist perspective. See it for what it is all I'm saying. Human rights played a crucial role in the realization of IPR, which is it's a lie. It's a lie. It encourages new ideas to make sure that they benefit society. See what I'm saying? Motivation for creativity. Human rights ensure that every person should receive a reward for their piece of work. At the same time, it makes sure that it also benefits society. So there's that contention. Understand what all that is. So yeah, they're placating. They're gaslighting you on the first half of this. Human rights ensure that every person should receive a reward for their piece of work. Oh wow, that's wonderful. At the same time, make sure that it also benefits society. So if it doesn't benefit society, you don't get jack shit. Or why should you have anything if it doesn't benefit society, if you have a right to anything? And that's with or without public funding. You know what I mean? You add public funding into the mix, and that just throws a whole different monkey wrench into the whole discussion, right? The context of the whole debate or whatever that is on this shit. Because if you're getting public funding to do this shit, then the public does have an interest in it. So I don't know. Who's pushing the public funding of all this shit? It's part of the same shit, you know what I mean? So whoever's pushing the public funding of all this and the bigger government to be able to push all the funding to do this, which would be extra constitutional powers, see what I'm saying? It all comes together. So I got public interest. Human rights promote the public interest mainly in the right to health. The right to health. The right to education and the protection of vulnerable groups, because of course the society and the capitalism and individualism targeted for destruction, that is what causes all the it's exploitive and it's racist, it's creates all these creates impoverished and vulnerable communities or whatever. It ensures that intellectual property law does not restrict them. It makes sure that the intellectual property laws do not restrict the promotion of the public interest or the right to health, the right to education, and the protection of vulnerable groups. So it's all seen in that redistributive justice type stuff too. So you can't this is what I'm saying. It's right there. The tension between our individual rights and liberty and our founding principles and the world socialism of human rights. I'm just showing you some different cases. I'm laying it out for you to see it in their words, not mine. Human rights and public health. So this is in 2018, right before right before COVID, right? On behalf of the World Public Health Association's Human Rights Forum. Before we even get into this article here, that I got some, I pulled out some stuff. Human rights in public health. Now, we want to know what the hell public health is. We hear public health all the time. Public health, public health, public health. There's a reason for it. It's not by happenstance. They got this organization down here on behalf of the American Public Health Association's Human Rights Forum. Okay, this is the Human Rights Forum here. The APHA, which is the American Public Health Association. That's it. You notice their logo here, how they got basically the Sustainable Development Goals logo, basically. I got something I want you to see. We got to listen to this. It's only like 4 minutes long or 5 minutes long, but I want you to hear this. I want you to hear what public health is. What is public health? From the horse's mouth.
Hi, my name is Mighty Fines. I'm an expert with the American Public Health Association, and today we're going to talk about public health. Let's say someone is diagnosed with heart disease. Their doctor prescribes some changes to their diet and exercise, maybe even medication. And over time, they get healthier. Our hypothetical heart patient is doing great now, but they could have been one of the 655,000 Americans who die of heart disease every year, according to a 2020 report from the American Heart Association, which is a lot of people our healthcare system needs to care for. And that's just one disease. So instead of treating people individually after they get sick, ideally, we just keep everyone healthy in the first place. That's where public health comes in. Public health can be tricky to define, partly because so many factors influence health. In ancient cities, public health interventions focused on sanitation, but also city planning.
Sanitation. Isn't somebody else talking about sanitation? Isn't it the no virus people that keep bringing up sanitation?
Over time, public health started targeting specific groups of people like factory workers. In industrial-era Great Britain in the 19th century, years of protesting led to better working conditions and fewer workplace deaths. Those were public health efforts too. These
Unions.
days, public health efforts often focus on addressing the systemic inequities that impact health, which are
I'm not making this shit up.
the differences in things like where we're born, where we work, and where we live that determine our access to the resources we need to be our healthiest selves, like safe drinking water and reliable healthcare. Research based on U.S. Census data from 2010 through 2015 shows that people living without these resources can die up to 20 years earlier than people living just a short distance away. Studies like this are an example of public health's population-based approach, which focuses on societies as a whole rather than individuals. A population
That's from the horse's mouth. The population is of a whole rather than individuals. Public health.
based approach can be used to inform educators, policymakers, and community leaders, all of whom play different roles in improving the health of the community. And like that census study showed, health issues aren't caused by any one thing, so they can't be tackled by any one solution. Take automobile safety. From 1979 to 2011, motor vehicle crashes in the U.S. decreased by more than 41%, which took a variety of strategies, like increased education, stricter laws around seatbelts and speeding, and improved design and use of child car seats. It wasn't a single strategy or solution, but multiple players working together to address the same issue from different angles, which is important because our societies don't treat people equally and different people have different needs. And
Society doesn't treat people equally. They have different needs. Well, but we can't treat them as individuals. We have to, the public, right?
And the best interventions don't just focus on the present. Public health experts call this an upstream focus.
Upstream is another slave speak word. Slaves speak upstream, downstream. When you push things upstream, you push your policies upstream, not only to deal with what you're doing here, but you push it upstream so that it affects society at large and it advances the revolution at large across the board. Pushing it upstream to make that change systemic, society-wide, worldwide if you can. Pushing it upstream.
Instead of just focusing on the issue and the problems it causes downstream, we look back upstream at the causes of potential health issues and how to prevent them. Like tobacco use. Despite several downstream measures to get people to stop using tobacco, from increased taxes on tobacco products to images of diseased organs on cigarette packaging, it remains a leading cause of death in the U.S., which is why intervening upstream and preventing tobacco use is so important.
You see the difference between upstream and downstream and how pushing it upstream to make it systemic policies that affect across the board, that affect change across the board.
Prevention could look like state-mandated school materials on the health impacts of tobacco or legislation that bars tobacco companies from advertising to children or communities with high rates of tobacco use. The goal is to prepare future generations to choose and maintain healthy behaviors. Finally, just like we use a population-based approach and focus on groups of people rather than individuals, effective public health interventions are holistic, which means they treat health as a whole rather than a single aspect.
Holistic health. Holistic health. Public health. Holistic health and the public health. Are they talking about holistic health, like they're going to take your whole body into consideration and how your whole body works together? I mean, since Obama, and I can remember hearing Obama talking about this as a campaigning point, that he wanted to make more and more medicine to be more and more specialized. We need more specialization. Instead of the doctors, you go in there and the doctor is like, pretty much whatever you had going on, the doctor could help you with. Maybe send you to a specialist here and there if you were dealing with something super complicated. But they specialized everything, and to the point where, like I've said before, literally, and it's happened to everybody else. And it's getting to the point now, if you have something wrong with your right arm, you go to the doctors and you're talking to the doctor. You say, well, you got to go to an arm specialist, right? And you get to the arm specialist and you say, well, my right arm, would be this one. My right arm, I got a problem with my right arm. And he says, well, I'm sorry, you can't talk to me because I'm a left arm specialist. You got to go see your right arm specialist. We're not that far from that right now. Literally.
So public health efforts to address heart disease could look like repairing sidewalks or creating parks in an under-resourced community. This would encourage people to get active,
Under-resourced.
improving their physical and mental
Redistribution
health.
of wealth.
So overall, public health includes all of the organized and holistic efforts to improve policy.
Holistic, again, it's not your whole body, it's the holistic, it's the collective. Holistic. It's like John Dewey's whole student education. Same shit.
Education, and access to make the healthiest choice the easiest choice for everyone. If you want to learn more about public health services, check out this.
Anyways, I wanted you to see that from the horse's mouth, what public health is from public health advocates. Okay. Now, another thing, just a little quick thing down here is that all this global governance that human rights is, and all the threat to private property that it is, and everything. And I went to both Wikipedia and Influence Watch. Okay, and you go to Influence Watch, and it'll tell you these who this organization is from. I look at what these guys have to say sometimes, on different organizations. A lot of times it'll have funding information, different kind of shit like that, and what their political alignments are, whether they're left or right or whatever. But they push in health equity. It says that the organization supports left-of-center goals regarding health equity, which is all redistributive justice shit, and the eliminating alleged systemic racism in society. And this organization was the first major organization to declare racism a public health emergency. They're declaring guns a public health emergency. They're declaring everything a public health emergency, and everything in the eyes from a public health perspective is from the collective human rights perspective. Right? And this organization was the first major organization to declare racism a public health emergency after the death of George Floyd. Gun control. They're in it with gun control. Climate change, race, to bring George Floyd into the conversation again. Criminal justice reform. I've done all kinds of paperwork and stuff on criminal justice reform and how this critical theory at large, critical race theory as an aspect of critical theory, and how it's all playing into all this whole critical conscience thing. Because if you didn't have the critical awareness and became you gained critical awareness and obtained a critical conscience because of that critical awareness to see all things and only all things critical of the society targeted for destruction, which just so happens to be ours. And then through that critical eye and critical understanding, you're going to see a society and everything critical of it. It's not the critical thinking that I knew growing up, where you took all the information that you could get, and deciphered through it and analyzed everything and used critical thought process to, come up with, the the answer that made most sense, right? This is a critical thinking that is opposite of that. It's just all things critical, and no chance for any debate on it. No chance for in this critical pedagogy that's being taught in our schools, with critical curricula that's being taught in our schools. It comes from a guy by the name of Paulo Freire, and it was the pedagogy of the oppressed. Okay, so they're teaching this shit to our kids, and it's the only thing they know. The only thing they know about our society and our country and our founding and of their own rights is through the eyes and the perspective of the revolution that's targeted them for destruction. That's what they've done to our society. And every generation through, even Antonio Gramsci prescribed this kind of shit. He was a communist held in prison by Mussolini. He wrote these prison papers, and he came up with this whole way to undermine a society and to benefit communist revolution. Every class that goes to school, every class coming up through school being taught this shit through critical theory, critical race theory, race hustlers, okay? They're out there putting all this shit forward as a way to undermine our society. And the only thing that these kids know about who they are and what our country is and their own freedom is through the eyes of the revolution, through this critical theory shit. And it doesn't allow for any other perspective. Even teachers have to go through cleansing or purification, if you will, of their baggage, of their whiteness, of their, they got to check their whiteness before they're even allowed to teach in the schools. Because to give a different perspective would be to give the oppressor a voice in the sanctuary of school. Do you see what I'm saying? It all ties together. It all ties together here. But I just wanted to show you that. Like down here, you go to Wiki. And you look these people up, American Public Health. It doesn't go down through here. It gives them the history, the governance of the. It doesn't, say anything. There's no mention of either human rights or the global governance that these guys are advocating. So I don't know. So even when you go to these places like Influence Watch and everything, they may or may not be giving you all the information, or just enough information. I don't know. It's like the health freedom movement doing the same shit. They don't give you all the information. They just give you enough information to steer you back around to hit the reset button. It's how I see it. Right back to the collectivism, the centralized medicine, centralized public-private partnerships that got us here. Pushing the same narratives that got us here. I don't know. I just wanted to point that out. But back to this article here from the American Public Health Association's Human Rights Forum. Okay. This year, what year is this? This was 2018, right before the pandemic. This year marks the 70th anniversary of both the birth of human rights law through the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the birth of global health governance through World Health Organization. Now, since this came out, I don't see any mention of One Health in here, but that's what One Health is. One Health is, and it's a lot of things, but what it is in the end is the codification of all the tenets of world socialist revolution, world collectivist revolution, be it communist, anarchist, humanist, doesn't matter. World socialism. It codifies the tenets of the revolution into overarching global governance health laws. Actually makes it illegal to push back. Illegal to push back against the revolution. This is where we are. This is where we are. Over the past 70 years, human rights have developed under international law, that's what I'm saying, as a basis for public health. As a basis, human rights Human rights have developed under international law as a basis for public health, providing a foundation for human rights realization through public health practice. Not in my words. In theirs. The American Public Health Association's Human Rights Forum. American Public Health Association. This is what public health is. Just trying to show you. Just putting this out there for your consideration. Yet this health and human rights movement now faces unprecedented threats amidst a shift toward populism. Wow. With the populist radical right in ascendance in the United States and in countries throughout the world. This is before the pandemic. This is in 2018. It was released, December of 2018, right about the same time, actually. If you think, well, about a year before the pandemic, right? A year before the announcement. I don't know. There it is. It's right there. I strongly suggest that you look this article up. It's a white paper. It's a freaking white paper. Okay? Academia is drunk on this shit. The whole of academia. To the point that it can't be separated. It's become ingrained, entrenched. All part of the same dip now. Commemorating these twin anniversaries for human rights and global health, it is imperative now more than ever that scholars, practitioners, and advocates engaged with human rights and public health policies, programs, and practices. Within the American Public Health Association, the newly established Human Rights Forum seeks to build the capacity of public health professionals to mainstream human rights in public health. See it. Within the American Public Health Association, the newly established Human Rights Forum seeks to build the capacity of public health professionals to mainstream public health rights in public health. Guess I wanted to say that twice. Operationalizing human rights in public health. With the advent of antiretroviral? Does it say antiretroviral? Antiretroviral. What is it? With the advent of antiretroviral, see, I thought that said antiviral at first. This is antiretroviral treatments in the 1990s. Human rights, therefore, frame demands for access to medicines in the streets and in the courts. The advent of antiviral, just antiretroviral treatments in the 90s. Now, I go into you go into one of these clinics that they have now. I don't know. It's like literally our healthcare system. You get put on a conveyor belt. It's conveyor belt freaking medicine is what we've got. Public health conveyor belt. You just sit on there and you go down through. They don't give two shits about you. You know? And yeah, they still don't treat you. They still don't. If they say that you have a virus, that you're sick from a virus, you don't get jack shit. I know, it just happened to me not too long ago. A global movement mobilizes establishing the normative and in many settings judicially enforceable socioeconomic right to health, a socioeconomic right to health, a global movement mobilized human rights to challenge the patent system. This is where we're going. A global movement mobilized human rights. A global movement mobilized human rights to challenge the patent system and secure access to generic medicines. Challenge the patent system. Not particular patents, but the system. Systemic change. In the global south, driving down the cost of HIV treatments by up to 99%. Yeah. This human rights framework, which demanded agency and dignity and access, which is, they're all selling points of this collectivism, repeated over and over and over again in collectivist doctrine. We demand agency, which is that you become an agent for change. Okay, dignity was, of course, is what global, the world rights, or the world socialism of human rights is supposed to give you, and mutual access, which is all, redistributive justice, has since been expanded far beyond HIV responses. In the United States, activists have utilized the right to health, to frame health policy reforms in Vermont, while some have questioned whether a rights-based framework is too individualistic to address public health. The right to health has been seen to bring about lasting societal improvements, with empirical evidence beginning to show how countries that implement human rights see a benefit to population health. Central planners can twist whatever they want to meet their needs. Truth according to the needs of the planners. And that's what, in all things, the truth in all things according to the needs of the planners. And I did a show, evidence-based policy. I did a show on evidence-based policy. It's one of my earlier shows. If you go to my Rumble channel and you go down through one of my earlier shows I did on evidence-based policy, and I talk about it too in a show I did with Matthias Desmond's, The World Socialism of Matthias Desmond's Psychology of Totalitarianism. I talk about this, evidence-based policy, and it's literally a white paper, and even in white papers in academia, it's the centralization of truth in all things. If you see it for what it is, and you read the words that they're telling you what people advocating say it is, it's the centralization of truth in all things according to the needs of the planners. And they use, and it implements psychological tactics, social engineering, what they refer to as it's the psychological tactics, nudge, motivational interviewing skills, halo, all the different military grade psychological manipulation of society in order to get it done. It incorporates that into what science on anything, any of the white papers and scientific findings on any of these experiments or studies or whatever they're doing. You should check it out. It'll expand your understanding of what they're saying here exponentially, and how that it's going to just roll it into the big snowball, or if you will, of world socialist revolution. Human rights being one of the main components of that. A critical time for human rights and public health. With human rights development operationalized, and mainstreamed over 70 years, the realization of these rights is now imperiled by the populist radical right. So they're already setting up the populist nationalist right as the main antagonist, right? We're already setting that up. Already setting it up as the go-to people if you want to push back against this, I guess. Threatening the protection of human rights and the advancements of public health. How many people in the medical freedom movement have you heard come out against public health? Just asking. This right-wing populism seeks to undo, it's established as a right-wing populist movement too, right? This right-wing populism seeks to undo the progress of past struggles, and it remains unclear how this opposition will affect the continuing evolution of human rights in public health. You understand what they're saying here, too. This right-wing populism seeks to undo the progress of past struggles. So it's now the left-wing world socialism of human rights that are the conservatives protecting the past struggles in progress. Where the conservatives one time were preserving the progress of our founding principles on the world stage, conservatives today are the ones protecting the progress of the world socialism and world collectivism has done towards, the pushing the collectivist revolution and the progress that it's made. Do you see what I'm saying? It's one of the reasons why the guy who wrote Road to Serfdom, right? Friedrich Hayek. It's one of the reasons why he said that he wasn't a conservative. Because what is conservatism except you're just protecting whatever that is, Just another thing to point out for your consideration. Yeah, in challenging the shared goals of human rights and public health, right-wing populism, I don't see who in the medical freedom movement is challenging human rights. There's none of them, they're not challenging human rights. I hear Shannon Joyce say human rights all the time. Jeffrey Tucker. Human rights. Read the Brownstone. Go to the Brownstone main page. Read down the introduction of what the Brownstone mission is. I think human rights is mentioned in that 2 or 3 times. But it's being set up as the go-to resistance. See it. In challenging the shared goals of human rights and public health, right-wing populism, abetted by the resurgent horrors of racism, xenophobia, this is your whiteness coming in now, anti-Semitism, and Islamophobia seeks a nativist definition of the rights of citizenship. This is now what's happening here is you're seeing a setup between a confrontation between world socialism of communism or humanism and anarchism, okay, versus the world socialism of nationalism. And like I said before, nationalism, and I've gone over in one of my other shows, nationalism is just another socialism, another collectivism that seeks to have a world collectivism of sovereign collectives or semi-sovereign collectives. But the word, what is sovereign, takes up a different meaning too, as I've gone over in another one of my shows. The whole concept of what sovereignty is in the context of human rights. And even Trump has put things, Trump's White House put it out in his first administration, his first term. Put it out. I don't have that here, but it's in another show. Put it out that we're the whole America First policy. The whole America First policy is based on the pushing human rights, collectivism. So how can you have world socialism of human rights and sovereignty at the same time unless sovereignty is taken up a new meaning? You see what I'm saying? Within the confines of the world socialism of human rights. But it all ties in. It all ties in. In challenging the shared goals of human rights and public health, right-wing populism, abetted by the resurgent horrors of racism, xenophobia, and anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, see they're setting up a confrontation between the world socialism of communism, human rights, and anarchism, and nationalism. Our founding principles aren't even so much as acknowledged. They're not even acknowledged here. But if you're a defender or want to be or think you want to, I don't know. If you're a defender of our republic, of our founding republic and founding principles, of our individual liberty, and you take a side here, you take one of these sides here, oh, we got to be against this communism of human rights, and we got to go with these guys that are pushing it back. You're jumping from the communist ship into the national ship, and both ships have their guns trained on our individual rights and liberty. Both of them have their guns trained on our constitutional republic and limited form of government. You know, because you can't let the perfect be the enemy of good. Can't let the perfect be the enemy of good. That pragmatism is on both the left and the right, as I've shown before too. Yeah. They seek a nativist definition of the rights of citizenship. Populist politicians have thus sought to define ethnic nationalism to the exclusion versus inclusion of the common humanity first proclaimed in the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Politicians have advanced radicalized responses to the harms of globalization, to the harms of a globalizing world. Now you've got globalism and you've got globalization. This is a globalizing world, which is usually referred to in collectivist doctrine as a capitalist, imperialist, exploitative expansion of capitalism is the globalization of the world, and it's the spread of world socialism is the globalism. But it depending on the context, it could be, it's not universal, it's just a rule of thumb. Politicians have advanced radicalized responses to the harms of a globalizing world, stirring mass fear about global elites. And collateral anger towards international migration. It was set up by Eric Weinstein, right? One of the guys. This ethnic nationalism, viewing human rights as anathema to national identity, has subverted the universality of rights, undercutting the very foundation of the health and human rights movement. Yeah, nationalism versus communism. See it. With liberal democratic values in retreat. Now, all of a sudden, the Democrats are referred to liberal democratic values. The world socialism of human rights is referred to as the liberal democratic values in retreat. That's consistent with Alexander Dugin's view of what liberalism is. And we have our national populist right over here saying that liberalism is. And we have Jeffrey Tucker saying liberalism is libertarianism, which is, it could be anything from a socialist, anarchist socialism to, I don't know, regular libertarian. Where 40, 50 years ago, what was a liberal was our founding principles, according to like the writings of Hayek and like in Road to Serfdom, and even in places in the Communist Manifesto. If you read them today with the words that they used, what liberals are today versus what liberalism was then, you run the risk of actually reading those in reverse if you're not aware of the fundamental change or aware of the change in meaning. of what a liberal is, or a liberal society is, or liberal democratic liberals are. With liberal democratic values in retreat, populist governments have violated human rights principles, restricted civil society advocacy, repressed minority populations, attacked gender equality, trans shit, right? Ignored scientific evidence. That's the science-ism. Science-ism. Science is a religion. They ignored scientific evidence, whatever that evidence is. But you got to remember, there's such a thing out there is called evidence-based policy that actually says what that scientific evidence is, according to the needs of the planners. I shit you not. And it also goes back to Auguste Comte's sociology. Again, I've said this before in other shows, what sociology is. And it was the queen of all science for a reason. And the scientific evidence, what scientific evidence is, or translates to, when you take all the scientific knowledge, scientific findings, and you funnel them through the filter of sociology so that the planners can best use those findings, reinterpret them as to how they could best be utilized, where and when and how they could be best be utilized to advance the evolution of human society towards its final end, or final objective of a single global human organism. I shit you not. Like some giant ant colony or beehive, like I said before. Well, hive mind shit with one queen or table of planners. See it? See what I'm saying? This is where I'm going. What public health is and how it ties into this shit. All right? And what the populist right, the bullshit populist right option actually is, from inside the collectivism of social, from inside the social collectivism of human rights, that both the left and the right, both the medical freedom movement is still pushing. Just saying. For your consideration. Yeah. They ignored scientific evidence and neglected public health. Again, public health, you know what public health is. Where these human rights challenges have largely been met with silence by the global community, with national governments avoiding international sanctions for human rights violations, there are concerns that this unchecked repression of human rights will lead to a post-human rights world. I don't think they have anything to worry about coming from the nationalist populist right of today's medical freedom movement. Maybe they couldn't drop that collectivist training that they've had. They just didn't get the message or something. I don't know. This right-wing populism, again, also seeks to retrench nations inward. Isolationism or whatever, right? With rising nationalist movements directly threatening the cosmopolitan. I did a show that brings in cosmopolitan in there. I've talked about this cosmopolitan shit before, too. Vision underlying global health and spurring isolationism in international affairs as a direct response to the increasing interconnectedness of a globalizing world. So a lot of times globalization refers to the capitalist globalization of the world. In this particular case, they're using globalizing. A globalizing world is being done by the world socialism of human rights. Populist nationalism has come to challenge the globalized world order and collective international decision-making. This backlash against globalism, has led to nationalist attacks on the legitimacy of global institutions. Populist nationalism has thus sought to erect walls to redivide and an integrated world, to redivide an integrated world, to break up the collective, right? The states abandoning the multilateral institutions that govern public health. The multinational institutions that govern public health and human rights. This poses an existential threat to the global health governance system. They do overtly push back against the global health governance system, don't they? But yet they still advocate the human rights. They didn't get the whole message. They just got part of the message. The medical freedom movement just got part of the message. I don't know. Right. This poses an existential threat to the global health governance system first established under the World Health Organization. That also came from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as we saw at the beginning, right? The resurgence of national sovereignty is isolating national governments and addressing common health challenges, undercutting the efforts of international organizations to implement human rights in global health. Such national entrenchment could lead to a rejection of both global governance and human rights as a basis for public health advancement. Again, our founding principles are given no credence, no voice here, no consideration whatsoever. We're being set up with the limited spectrum of debate in this is only between the world socialism of communism and the world socialism of nationalism. See it. Threats from the populist radical right have subverted the universality of human rights. They didn't get that message. That's part of the message that they didn't get, must be. Again, because they're advocating human rights. As a matter of fact, they're advocating anti-capitalism. As a matter of fact, they're advocating a lot of the shit that they say, a lot of the resistance and pushback against what America is or was. What these people are doing now that they're actually in government and in power in different parts of the government and in appointed positions, they haven't dropped that world socialism of human rights. And it might give us a window into understanding of how these people are implementing the policies that they're implementing and not implementing the policies that a lot of the people on the right, knowingly or unknowingly, thought, wittingly or unwittingly, were along for the ride thinking that they were going to push back against this whole centralized medicine, this increased government power and everything. Be it nationalist or communist, world socialist or nationalist. I don't know. There's just a lot of questions. More questions come up here. And this is what I'm trying to show you for consideration. I'm not trying to say I have all the answers here. I'm just trying to expose this to you for what it is. Not in my words, but from the words of the people advocating this shit. That's all. That's all there is. That's all I'm trying to do. Yeah, threats from the populist radical right have subverted the universality of human rights, rejected the science of public health. No, I don't think they have. And threatened health cooperation within global governance, where the development of WHO and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights gave birth to a revolution in global governance for public health. It's right there. I'm not saying it. It's people advocating what human rights are and what public health is are saying what they're doing. Where the development of the World Health Organization and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights gave birth to a revolution and global governance for public health, binding the world together around shared rights-based values. Remember Hillary Clinton, a shared responsibility for a shared prosperity. I don't know if all you people remember that shit, but I do. Shared. It's another slave speak word, like balance is a slave speak word in the context of this collectivism. Yeah, the populist counter-revolution. Is it a counter-revolution or just an offshoot of the same revolution circling around to be able to attack us from both sides? To attack us from two sides. The collectivism from the left, collectivism from the right. Do you see what I'm saying? It's not a counter-revolution. Public health practitioners have a crucial role in responding to the populist radical right. Public health practitioners. Cortez, you know? Yeah. Is RFK Jr. a public health practitioner? Is he a public health administrator? Have a crucial role in responding to the populist radical right, pursuing political advocacy to assure the future of human rights and public health. Reflecting on the progress of human rights at this critical time, there is a need for health professional associations to support the rights-based public health. Rights-based. Science. Rights-based public health. Rights-based whatever. Human rights-based. It applies to a multitude of subject matter. Anyways, I got another thing here. It's also in response to Trump's MAGA or Maha right-wing populist nationalism. I got this article here. I just want to point this out. It's all the same shit. Indivisible and partners announced No Kings nationwide day of defiance on Flag Day during Trump's birthday parade. This was just in recent news. I try not to dig into or dive into or get caught up in contemporary politics of the hour. I try to stick more to what the philosophies are that are perpetuating them. It's like, contemporary politics, but contemporary policy change is like the waves on the surface that are all going to and fro, and they're crashing into this shore and they're crashing into that shore, and they're having an effect, and they're important to be aware of. But what I'm trying to point out are the ocean of forces beneath those waves that are causing those waves to do, political waves, whatever, revolutionary waves, whatever, that are causing those waves to do what they're doing. Trying to bring this attention to you for your consideration. For anybody who gives a shit, if there's still anybody left out there who gives a shit. Sitting here on a 100-degree frickin' day trying to get this information out to you. So it is what it is. Mini P too. Right, P? Okay, just show you what this movement was here a little bit. I want to show you what it was here, I guess. I got a little bit on here just to show you what it was. The Indivisible Project is a social movement, nonprofit, driven by a vision of real democracy. Again, democracy is part of a 2 or 3 step Leninist type of Marxist revolution. Okay, they advocate democracy because Marx's dictatorship of the proletariat can't really come into fruition if our republic is still intact. And what our republic does, real simple, real quick, is just like in a ship or submarine. And I've said this before, but I think it's good to reiterate this. The difference between a republic and democracy that the leftists, that the collectivists, that the socialists, that the communists are always pushing. Even the nationalists are always pushing democracy. our republic, our founding republic, what that did is that broke our society up, our nation up into compartments, like in a submarine, it's broken up into sections, where if there's a leak or a fire in one section, it can be sealed off so that that fire doesn't spread through, or it's less likely that that fire could spread through to the rest, or that leak could spread through the rest of the vessel and sink it. Our republic does the same shit to our society through a national government, state government. When we have county governments, we have local governments, we have village governments and that kind of shit. And what that does is that sections things off so that if there's a fire on one end of the country and one spot of the country, it doesn't, on Madison and Federalist 10 referred to them as faction, doesn't spread unchecked or unabated from sea to shining sea. That's what our republic was supposed to do. And Marxist revolution, communist revolution, collectivist revolution calls for that dictatorship of the proletariat, where there's get this revolution to spark and burn that fire. They want that open democracy, which will eliminate those firewalls that were set up with our republic. Just so that you see the difference there really quick. I mean, that's just how I break it down so that I can understand what it is, and I'm just sharing that with you, I guess. About the Indivisibility Project. It's driven by a vision for real democracy of, by, and for the people. Yeah, right. Indivisible began in 2016 as a viral guide to resisting Trump's agenda. Today, the Indivisible movement is a network of thousands of groups and millions of activists across every state. The Indivisible Project drives campaigns for bold progressive policies. Lobbies Congress and equips activists with tools to build lasting progressive power. Progressives. What is a progressive? I don't know. It's progress. Progressives work towards progressing the progress of our fundamental transformation from a free society to a collectivist one. If you understand it that way, you'll know exactly what a progressive is. And this kind of showcases that, just so that you can see it. The Indivisible Project drives campaigns for bold progressive policies, lobbies Congress, and equips activists with the tools to build lasting progressive power everywhere. Together we fight to defeat the right-wing takeover of American government and build an inclusive democracy. You see what I'm saying? Again, we're set up with that limited spectrum of debate between the world socialism of communism and anarchism versus the world socialism of nationalism. No King's partners. This is the people that were partnering with these guys. Just to give you an idea, some of the ACLU, some of the different organizations that were behind that No King's movement, There's a communist fist. Resist. Rise and resist. There's a resist. Communist fist with that. Communist fist with the women's movements, right? Or trans movements. Communist fist is everywhere. And see what it is for what it is. See what it is and for what it is. I've got this health and human rights from Colombia. Mailman School of Public Health. Okay. Anyways, across the U.S. and around the world, profound inequities and structural barriers undermine or prevent the realization of the right to health for tens of millions of people. Again, Collectivism 101, Collectivist Revolution 101, Critical Theory 101, Critical Race Theory 101. It's all right there. This is the context which everything gets pushed forward from this point on. Okay? Health and human rights. Health and human rights. In addition, some health programs and policies are instituted in ways that tolerate or reinforce discrimination. facilitate stigma or undermine human dignity. Of course, if you're undermining human dignity, and the only way you can have human dignity is in freaking human rights. You know, the human rights, it says there's no right to self-defense. The human rights, it says there's no human right to patents. That dignity. Okay. Increasingly, the public health field is recognizing that integrating human rights approaches into public health practices and policies can provide a powerful force for social justice and improved health. Okay. See it. This certificate will prepare graduates. Oh, you got to get a certificate here. Get a certificate in this. This certificate will prepare graduates with the conceptual frameworks and practical tools for designing, implementing, and advocating for rights-based health programs, policies, and systems. Areas to be covered include, for example, the social, commercial, and colonial determinants of health. The colonial aspects. And you can see in collectivist doctrine, too, where they refer to patent rights, intellectual property rights, as the colonialism of a capitalist society, of the global north or whatever. It's all the same shit. This certificate, well, let me see. Areas to be covered include, for example, the social, commercial, and colonial determinants of health. Social determinants of health. HIV/AIDS, global vaccine justice. Global vaccine justice. Of course, you can't have global vaccine justice with IP and you can't have that justice or access to vaccine justice if you have patent rights or intellectual property rights that a lot of these pharmaceuticals are pushing that they have on this. So this is where they've been pushing for what they call these march-in rights comes in handy too. It's all public funding. They're all done with public funding. A lot of this shit is done with public funding. And you get the public funding and then you can still keep the patent rights, but it allows the government what they call these march-in rights, which again compromises what intellectual property rights are, what patent rights are in the context of public good. So people pushing for the more and more increased public funding of these things are setting the trap. They're baiting the trap with public funding for a universal across-the-board compromise of our property rights via a compromise or destruction of intellectual property rights or patent rights or intangible rights that are open to vulnerability once you see them in the context of the world socialism of human rights and public health. And after going through 150 to 200 years of a fundamental transformation in mindset from an individual rights and liberty mindset, rugged individualism mindset, and a traditional American mindset, free people mindset, to the compliance, the what Tony Ogramsky referred to as the spontaneous consent to the compliance of top-down central planning that collectivism trains us to understand things in. It's all wrapped up in this. It's all the same shit. Just trying to point it out for your consideration. Our public health system for what it is. Not in my words, but in the people's words, advocating what these human rights are and advocating what those human rights and public health is in the context of the world socialism of human rights. Yeah. But graduates of the program will be well equipped for positions in local, national, and international public health programs. Boy, drink enough of this frickin' Kool-Aid, man, and you'll be able to frickin' get a job anywhere, man. Come on, man. The ship is gonna sail. Jump on. Right? Yeah. As well as non-governmental organizations, NGOs. Cool, you're gonna be able to work for an NGO. And foundations. Oh, Carnegie, Rockefeller, and maybe Kaiser Foundation or some shit, that employ rights-centered analysis and action. The competencies for this certificate are as follows: assess human rights norms, instruments, and tools that are pertinent to advancing social justice and public health, and conceiving public health as a tool of social justice. It's right there. It's right there, right? Apply provisions from a range of human rights instruments, including international human rights law, humanitarian law, and the national and constitutional laws that embody rights. You'll be able to explain the history and current efforts of applying human rights ideas to public health, including the role of social movements. Everything is socialized in collectivism. Everything is socialized in collectivism. Everything socialized is centrally planned in collectivism. You can't have collectivism without a centrally planned collectivism. It can't exist. Can't happen. Collectivism is contingent upon central planning, contingent upon the authority to enforce that central planning. You'd be able to critically evaluate the extent to which health programs and policies are demonstrably based on human rights, norms, and approaches. So you'd be able to critically evaluate. In other words, evaluate the system, the dominant system still in place. You examine that critically in order to show how the human rights norms and approaches are creating a justice in the injustice of that old system. Guns as a public health issue. This is what I'm saying. This public health, if more things that you can wrap up in the context of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says that we have a right to health. Everyone has a right to health. The collective has a right to health. Okay, it's a universal collective right to health. Once anything can be rolled into that, what in the world doesn't affect our health, whether we're awake or asleep? What aspects of our life and humanity do not affect our health? It does not affect public health. There's nothing outside the realm of possibilities that can be rolled into to gain compliance on any one of a number of issues, on any issue whatsoever, actually. Maybe you can come up with something that doesn't affect our health or public health. Maybe. Or potentially affect our health or public health. The public health approach to gun violence prevention. See what I'm saying? This is what I was saying earlier, is that you want to understand that you have an individual right to keep and bear arms. And then you want to understand that right in the collectivism, the world socialism of human rights, that the National Rifle Association is saying that they're championing your right to keep and bear arms as a human right. Can you see how that is just frickin' stupid? It's self-conflicting. Are they doing it on purpose? Once you argue for your individual rights and liberty in the courts or any place else in the context of the human rights that has targeted them for destruction, you've automatically at once lost them. And that's how they're freaking doing it in our legal system today. And you can't hold the government to strict scrutiny in the world socialism of human rights. That can't be done for any of our individual rights. The world socialism of collectivism doesn't allow philosophically, ideologically, I'll get it right someday, or even legally in human rights law. There's human rights law on the books. I know it's on the books in New York State, and it's across the board. One Health policies, human rights policies have been interwoven into the missions of I don't know, maybe all public agencies, federal agencies now? I don't know. Most all, if not all. This is where we are. Gun violence is a public health issue. The Health Department's Division of Chronic Disease and Injury Prevention, along with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, that's the CDC, understands that gun violence is a public health issue. Has that changed since Maha got in there? Has that changed? Has there been a policy change on that? Just saying. Social factors can impact your health. In public health, we often talk about social determinants of health. That's the whole Sustainable Development Goals, and that's all right out of the United Nations. That social determinants of health, which automatically infers that there is a redistributive justice that needs to be done. What we're talking about when we talk about social determinants are everyday social factors that can impact someone's health. The CDC defines social determinants. This isn't collectivist doctrine. This isn't anarchist doctrine. This isn't world socialist doctrine. This is the CDC. The CDC defines social determinants as conditions in which people are born, grow, work, and live, and age. There it is. Social determinants of health. They also include broader forces and systems that shape our everyday lives and living conditions. The 5 major social determinants in health are education, healthcare, neighborhoods, and the built environment, which includes buildings, streets, parks, transportation systems, and other elements that make up the places where we could live and work. Society. Social and community context, which refers to the social, cultural, and physical environment where people live, work, and interact with each other. And 5 is economic stability, which, I mean, who gets to define what economic stability is? Well, we have equal outcome, right, of collectivist equal outcome, right? The communist lawn isn't fully established until every freaking blade of grass is mowed to the same level, right? Redistributive justice. Communism. In public health, we promote health equity by improving social determinants of health, aka redistributive justice. I'm going to cut it there for today. I've got a lot more on this, just to give you a taste. Let me go back to this. Let me go back here. Just to give you a little taste on where we're going to go next. You got the Human Genome Project, public health and intellectual property rights and human rights connection, and the assault on our property rights, the assault on our intellectual property rights, right, and patent rights and copyright or whatever, intangible, tangible and intangible. Fundamentally, it is assault on our property rights, period. Understand that, see that. And I got a couple things down through here. And how more on. I'm still diving into the how the Human Genome Project ties into this, and intellectual property rights and human rights. I mean, let me see. Yeah, but this book here came out in 1998. But I'm telling you, in which the Human Genome Project is mentioned 21 times in that intellectual property and human rights thing. But this is where I'm going. I'm going to get into it a little bit more, the human rights connection, on how they're undermining our property rights through public health, social determinants, redistributive justice. They're attacking our property rights. Well, property rights. And just to sign off on this thing, I'll give you an idea to really understand why our property rights are detrimental to the revolution to destroy and they're a fundamental cornerstone to what America is as founded. Let me see. I just want to give you. This is from Noah Webster's. You see, I got it highlighted. I highlighted this. I don't know how many years ago I got all the way through these Federalist papers and anti-Federalist papers. But yeah, the whole front half is anti-Federalist. But I don't know if I said it on this video or not before, but the Federalist papers in combination with the anti-Federalist papers are the owner's manual to our republic. The arguments, they were both trying to preserve the same liberty, an objective of preserving the same liberty. The anti-federalists said, well, I don't know, we're going to go to this Constitution thing. I don't know, our rights are threatened under this Constitution A, B, and C. And the Federalists wrote back, no, this Constitution, this can't happen with this Constitution because the Constitution protects them via 1, 2, 3. They have to be taken into context together. Of course, then you've got anarchists like Jeffrey Tucker's von Mises Institute, and what the hell's his name? I can't remember the guy's name. But the whole von Mises Institute, the libertarian things that they're defending, pushing back against this as part of the medical freedom movement. Rothbard. Yeah, Rothbard's the guy's name. The von Mises Institute, they all follow this Rothbardian guy. Malone was out there at the von Mises Institute pushing his anti-capitalist disaster capitalism shit, right? With his psyops, psy-war, whatever that shit is. Yeah. That whole Rothbardian von Mises shit, they're pushing back against our constitutional republic, saying that our Constitution is illegitimate. How many people in the medical freedom movement know that? How many of the medical freedom movement people that are praising the frickin' human rights advocating Brownstone Institute know that shit? Of course, if you're a nationalist populace, you don't give a shit about the Constitution anyway, because that Constitution limits the government powers that the nationalists want to have, just as much as the communists and the anarchists. Well, much as the communists want to have. The anarchists are just there to fight back against the existing government, period. Right? I don't know. But anyways, just to give you an idea why and where our founders were coming from on what private property was, and it's out of that Noah Webster's Defense of the Constitution, 1787. Okay, you can look this up online or whatever, but it says the powers vested in Congress are little more than nominal. Nay, real power cannot be vested in them, nor in anybody, but in the people. Real power is in the people. The source of power is in the people of this country and cannot for ages and probably never will be removed. There's a multitude of ways that in the fundamental transformation of our mindset from the rugged individualism that our founders had, and individual rights and liberty, natural, God-given, endowed by our Creator, unalienable individual rights and liberty of our founding. We've gained a collectivist mindset that is undermining those wholesale. In what then does real power consist? The answer, in short and plain, is in property. Just a couple things in here. I don't want to read you a whole bunch because this is a pretty long defense of our Constitution, but there's a couple things I just want to point out. In America, we begin our empire with more popular privileges than the Romans ever enjoyed. We have not to struggle against a monarch or an aristocracy. Power is lodged in the mass of the people. We don't get our power, we don't get our rights from the government. The government got its ordained, limited, enumerated powers as a product of the liberty of the people. Instituted among men deriving its just powers from the consent of the governed, the opposite of history. Yeah. But we observe that the power of the people has increased in exact proportion to their acquisition of property. Whenever the right of primogeniture is established, property must accumulate and remain in families. Thus, the landed property in England will never be sufficiently distributed to give powers of government wholly into the hands of the people. But to assist the struggle for liberty, commerce has interposed, and in conjunction with manufacturers, thrown a vast weight of property into the democratic scale. Okay? Wherever we cast our eyes, we see this truth, that property is the basis of power, and this being established as a cardinal point directs us to the means of preserving our freedom. I'm not making this shit up. Anyways, in the footnotes, he says down here, the English writers on law and government consider the Magna Carta, trial by juries, habeas corpus act, and the liberty of the press, freedom of the press. These are all things that are mentioned a lot of times. Okay, as the bulwarks of freedom. All this is well, but in no government of consequence in Europe is freedom established on its true and immovable foundation. The property is too much accumulated and accumulates too well guarded to admit the true principle of republics. But few, in lords and monarchs, right? But few centuries have elapsed since the body of the people were vassals. To such men, the smallest extensions of popular privileges was deemed an invaluable blessing. Hence the encomiums upon trial and juries, and the articles just mentioned. But these people have never been able to mount to the source of liberty, estates in fee or fee simple, or at least but partially they are yet obliged to drink from the streams. Magna Carta, trial by juries, habeas corpus, shit like that, right? Is drinking from the streams. You're obliged to drink from the streams of liberty. Hence the English jealousy of certain rights which are guaranteed by the acts of Parliament. They come from government. But in America, this is the difference. But in America, and here alone, we have gone at once to the fountain of that stream, the fountain of liberty, and raised the people to their true dignity. Not the bullshit dignity of human rights. Compliance, mass compliance to central planning dignity of human rights. But in America, and here alone, we have gone at once to the fountain of liberty and raised the people to their true dignity. Let the lands be possessed by the people in fee simple. Let the fountain be kept pure, and the streams will be pure, of course. Our jealousy of trial and jury, the liberty of the press, etc., is totally groundless. Such rights are inseparably connected with the power and dignity of the people, which rests in their property. They cannot be abridged. They're unalienable. All other nations have wrested property and freedom from barons and tyrants. We begin our empire with full possession of property and all its attending rights. This is the difference. This is the difference between the frickin' dignity, so-called dignity, of collectivism's mass compliance to central planning of the world socialism to the world socialism of human rights versus the dignity of property, freedoms based on property, and the freedom and liberty to pursue an independent happiness. Independent happiness. Anyways, I'm going to end it there. I hope you got something out of it. And you can see what's going on here and what public health is, how public health in the context of human rights, and this whole world collectivism is just another strand of the web coming around. You know, it's all the same show. And how they're working against our property rights. They're dissecting our property rights to social and cultural rights. Here, P, you want? Come here. Here, kid. Come here. This is Pete. Me and Pete are going to sign off for today. Again, I'm Joe Marshall. And what do you say, Pete? Got anything to say? Huh? I couldn't say it any better. Thank you.